Hey, what's going on, everybody? So I got a question here from one of my Patreon subscribers. By the way, so on my Patreon page, I have at the moment 3 different tiers, and the top tier um, allows you to ask any question you want, and uh, one question a month, and I do video responses. So there's a couple that I have this month, and here's the first one. So the first question that I'm going to do the video for is, hey Abe, question for this month's personal video request. Want your opinion on the whole political landscape in America right now. Black Lives Matter, COVID, the media. Do you think the media is exaggerating and lying to distract us and steal our attention and get us angry? Yeah, 100%. I know you said you liked the Hodge twins back in the day, and they have very strong opinions about Black Lives Matter and the leftist agenda. So I was curious to hear your personal opinions on everything going on. I'm very open-minded and I genuinely try to hear both sides of the spectrum, but obviously have my own personal beliefs, so just wanted to hear yours. Love. Well, thanks for that question. You know who you are. And so let's break this down first. So yeah, going to the media first. So your first question was like, on the political landscape and the media, you know, wanting to steal our attention, get us angry. Yeah, 100%. So the media is an industry, right? It's at the end of it, it's there should be the news, and then there is the what the news has become today, which is entertainment, right? So there's I'm not going to go into that. There's plenty of great people who have talked about it. There's plenty of great movies that talk about this. Anchorman, I think, especially the second one, really talks about it really well. The movie, it's like uses comedy to really talk about pretty serious issues that we have, that how we believe the media. And a lot of older generation, my parents' generation, would just believe anything that's written down. It suddenly becomes official, like a newspaper. Oh, this must be official. This must be the truth. And even worse, my grandparents' generation, our grandparents' generation, even worse, things that were written down. So they were very easily open to being manipulated and controlled. And a lot of the news organizations back in those days were government owned, for example, the BBC. And so imagine government agenda, being able to control and manipulate an entire nation's way of thinking and believing and doing things. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in the 20s and 30s, I might not be correct with the dates, but I know that Hitler in World War II utilized propaganda, extremely well. I think all sides did, but I think Hitler used it pretty well and had, structure, and he had an organization. He had head of propaganda. There was a whole department and crew that focused on it. So propaganda, or you could just say it's just messaging, right? Branding. And this is Trump. He's a master brander, master of manipulation. At the end of the day, it's sales, right? It's being able to convince people of your perspective, of your message, in order to reach some sort of a goal or objective. So, when you're asking, do I think the media is exaggerating? Well, 100%. Are they lying? Well, 100%. To distract us and steal our attention and get us angry? 100%. The media, unfortunately, like I said at the beginning, is an industry. And what are they selling? They are selling sensationalism. They are selling news, right? That's their product. And there needs to be news for them to have a product. So unfortunately, they go and they create a lot of conflict and they create a lot of problems, and they create they create a lot of anger, and they create a lot of division, and they want something to report. They want there to be breaking news. Like CNN should just call themselves breaking news, because every minute of the day it's just breaking news. I used to watch CNN. I used to like be a follower until I just started waking up and seeing and now like it's just the response, the way that CNN, what it has turned into, it's just really just quite sad. But it's okay. It's like that's just it is what it is. It's up to us to educate ourselves and to know what it is. I mean, Fox News, in my opinion, is like, without disrespecting anybody out there, it's just even worse, than CNN. But they're just both not very good anymore. It's hard to find like good news. I personally watch PBS. That's the news that I go to. It seems more like the BBC, which is more based on sharing information, rather than sharing a perspective, right, or an agenda. So going back to this question, I would argue things like ISIS. ISIS was heavily fueled by the news. It was maybe small groups of pockets of people that started getting this massive, powerful spotlight of attention from the news, like from CNN. It's almost like a record label that's found a small artist, a new artist, and okay, we need to support this artist and get behind them and promote them. They're going to be our next Madonna or whoever, our new Lady Gaga or whatever, right? So the CNN is like Sony Records or Universal, and they're pumping attention, pumping funds into their new news story, which is ISIS. And then of course what's going to happen is it's going to fuel recruitment, and everyone's going to want to go join this, what seems like a legitimate organization, right? So I think the news organizations don't realize what repercussions they're going to be in for in the future, once people realize what they are responsible for. Kind of like how, all the sexual harassment cases, for things that happened like 20, 30 years ago or a very long time ago, or just, how we're dealing with the topic now of racism and slavery and, all these organizations that are now changing their names, like the Washington Redskins, they're all rebranding. They've had these names for so long, but now it's unacceptable. And I think also in the future, we're going to see like how unacceptable it has been, the behavior of these news organizations to create conflict, to create, arguably you could say that they're responsible for so much death and suffering on this earth and so much division, where they had the platform, they had the capability to unite us and bring us together. But I also, on the flip side, believe that all of this crap that takes place does bring the best out of us in the end, because it can even like accelerate, things. The risk is that you don't know which way it's going to go, but ultimately you all know what I believe, that good always prevails, and I have I've argued a case for why I believe good is stronger than evil. multiple cases, multiple instances I have explained that in my previous videos. But good is stronger than evil because evil stems from fear, and fear stems from lack, from insecurity, from desperation. Ultimately, it stems from weakness. So it goes to the big dog. The big dog is always chill because it's strong and powerful, and the small dog is always barking and, you know, screaming and being aggressive because it's weaker, because it's insecure, because it's afraid. So yes, 100% the news, does that, and we have to be very mindful. And when we watch the news, it's okay to watch the news. I still watch, like I watch CNN. I don't really watch Fox News because I just really can't. It's just way too much. It's just living in it's just in a wacky world of its own. But I do watch it from time to time just to kind of check in and see what's going on there. And it doesn't matter like what's going on, as long as you're educated and you can see past all of the lies and the sensationalism, and you can see past what they're trying to do, then you can always find the truth that's in there. And doing our own research, nothing beats that. Like actually go out and do your own research. Go have as many sources as possible, and then you'll be able to see the commonalities, and you'll be able to see where the truth is. Ultimately, we can feel and we know what the truth is. There's plenty of information out there for us. And the truth usually clicks, and it usually makes sense. And so yeah, let's go back to this question, which is quite a big question, but we can try to unpack it. So in regards to the Black Lives Matter and COVID and all of this, so with in regards to the different agendas, well, it's clear that the CNNs of the world, it's clear who they're supporting, and it's clear who the Fox Newses of the world are supporting. Now, I try not to get too bogged down into the details, right? I try to just look at kind of try and get the simple kind of perspective. If I look at Republican conventions, there's throughout the I've been living here now 20 plus years, and even back in George Bush Sr., Clinton days, George Bush Jr., Obama, people who were running against Obama at the time, you can just see who they're representing, right? So if you look at Republican convention, it's mostly, you don't really see that much diversity. Now they're trying, so whenever, let's say, there is a speech, they'll cleverly try to position, people behind, in the background, that, black people, Asian people, to try to make it look like it's diverse. But it's not diverse. It's unfortunately representing a certain group of people. And if you look at the other side, let's say the left, the Democrats, whatever, it's pretty clear who's being represented there. It's extremely diverse. You see black, white, Asian. You see a big mix, right? So this question is a big question, can go on for hours, and I'm not going to pretend or claim to know all the details. I just don't. It's a very deep topic. I don't even think the people at the top know fully everything. It's just a very, very deep thing. But I can tell you that there is, and there has been, a battle, a conflict, not necessarily a bad thing. It's good. We need that sort of, the Zoroastrians believe that there's good and bad, and there will always be, in constant, constantly fighting against each other, right? And our hope is that because of that, this balance will be brought into the world. So we do need both sides, And I would say that the problem that we are facing now is the Republican Party, from my perspective, my limited understanding, but I follow politics very deeply, since I was very young, I've lived in the Middle East, I lived in the Middle East for 10 years. I lived in England and Europe for 13 years. I lived here in the States, for close to 20 years. And I lived in Asia also for a couple of years as well. And I can tell you that divisions and differences exist even in your own family. They exist even within yourself. So we can divide endlessly. We can divide a nation, we can divide a state, we can divide a city, we can divide a town, we can divide a family, we can divide even yourself. There's so many of us that are conflicted and we fight ourselves. So the good and bad, let's call it that, or the left and the right will exist forever, endlessly. Now, our world has come from the Dark Ages, where we would rape and murder and pillage and fight, and as a result of that tribalism, small tribes, this is where we came from. We came from small tribes. There's a movie, I think it was Hero, I can't remember. One of those really great, epic Chinese so-called historical movies, but you could argue propaganda again, But with respect to the Chinese people and the movie makers, they claim it's like a historical, based on historical figures. And there's a great line in there, where they argue that the Chinese emperor's driving force for crushing the tribes and to create the great nation the great empire of China was to create peace, right? To create one civilized nation out of a lot of warring tribes. So that's one example, but there are many examples. I'm sure all of you out there know, how many empires have tried to do that. The Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, it's either been done through national pride of bringing a nation together, or it then wound up happening through religion, through faith, right? Religions came along, so it was no longer about countries and nations, it became about a faith. And then you had the Crusades, and you had all these different countries and nations banding together under the flag of Christianity, or under the flag of Islam, all these different. So nations band together for strength, people band together for strength, and it's this tribal behavior, at the end of the day, for survival, to find strength. I believe that we just need balance. So, perhaps our world has been going towards that, let's say, that globalistic, like one world order, right? But I think that it's not necessary. I think we've reached a point in our world where, okay, like all the countries we have now are enough. Let's just leave the countries. We don't need to, again, we don't need to unify all of Europe together and try and turn that into one country, or maybe we do, like I said, I'm not an expert in this, but I think that I can see, you don't need to be an expert, you don't need to have common sense. My degree, I studied computer programming, computer science, business, at college in England and London. And my world is music and art and business and technology. And I have a deep love for human psychology and the way we behave. Um, but it's difficult when you get to politics, and trade and trying to unify and you know keep your keep your nation with jobs and education, which I'm going to come back to at the end of the day. That's what matters the most is education and jobs. That's where I believe the focus of every great leader should be in their community, in their family, with as a person. Focus on educating yourself and being occupied. And we live in a world that just works on money. So being occupied in a way where you can earn a living, pay your bills, is extremely important. And so that should be the focus of a town, a governor, is to educate and to create opportunities, jobs. And that should be the goal of a state, to educate, make sure everybody has access to good education and to provide jobs, right? Same should be with a president, any great leader. Unfortunately, poor leaders rise up to the top and they divide in order to suppress, to keep everybody under control. And then they don't care, they do the opposite of educate and provide jobs. They want to keep their population poor, jobless, struggling, and uneducated in order to dominate and control them. So this type of domination leads into the next part of your question, which is, Black Lives Matter, and what are my opinions on this? Okay, so domination and controlling people, right? So I have made notes because your question was quite deep and I don't want to miss anything, but who do we usually put down? Where do we find bullying usually occurs? Bullying and putting people down. We usually bully and put people down who we are afraid of. We usually bully, or the people who are subject of bullying are usually the best. They're usually very talented. They're usually strong. And they usually present a threat to whoever's in control. Or they'll just present a threat to whoever wants control. And unfortunately, this is the problem with our world, is there are people out there who just want to dominate. They want to control. Not everyone's like that. I would argue the majority of people just want to live in harmony, want to enjoy life. But there are a group of people, and unfortunately, if you look through history, especially recent history, the last 150 years, it's a lot of fascism. You'll see the World War I, you'll see World War II, and I have strong personal views on this that I don't think this is the correct platform to share, but if you look at, a lot of fascism and a lot of still exists today. There is this superiority complex that exists with certain people. They want to be superior, they want to be in charge, they want to dominate, they want to feel as though they are better, and they use race in that way. They believe they are superior because of their race, which is just complete delusion, and actually opposite of the truth, because a lot of scientists and historians will argue that our core comes from Africa, that we originate from there, that the original human beings, the oldest evidence of humans comes from Africa. And archaeologists and historians believe that there was a migration from out of Africa, through the Middle East, through Asia, into Europe, and, I'm not a historian, but if people are interested in this, I would suggest go and, study what we have found, what science has found, and make your own assessment based on all of that. But personally, from my life experience, growing up in the Middle East, I saw racism towards black people. I saw racism from, you know, Middle Eastern people, Arab people towards towards blacks, towards all national faiths. I have seen that racism when I was in Asia towards black people, towards different people. I have seen racism in Europe towards Middle Eastern people, towards black people, towards... Racism exists everywhere. Not only in this country, and slavery has existed everywhere, not only in this country, and nations, empires have been built on the back of slavery. Let's look at the Egyptian Empire. People will say that the pyramids were built by aliens, which, in my opinion, I've been there, I've visited, I've seen the pyramids, I've seen how they carve the stones. There are incomplete obelisks, those the things that... Go look it up on Google. But there are obelisks that are incomplete, that are still in the stone, that have been partially carved, that were never completely taken out because maybe they were not correctly done, or they figured this is not going to withstand time. But you can see like every chip, and I think it's such a great insult to the amount of human work that went into building those unbelievable structures. And how was it all built? It was all built on the backs of slaves, on slavery. And God knows, like, maybe it was, who knows, like, who those slaves were. Were they maybe black slaves? Were they Middle East? Who knows, Maybe people do know, But the point is that slavery built that empire. Free labor, cheap free labor, right? I believe that they were paid, actually, but I think it would be very, very low, wages. And the same with this country, with America, built, on free labor. Like, can you imagine that? Like, do you understand, like, how important, like, the cost of labor is to a corporation, to an industry? Like, that's usually the biggest cost, is labor cost. Materials is a cost, but then labor is a major cost. That's why so many companies outsourced their manufacturing operations to countries like China and Vietnam and Asia, right? So because of the cheap labor, especially China, such cheap labor, at the time. And not only low cost labor, but highly educated. Chinese people are very, very educated people. So, America became a consumer nation and outsourced, all the manufacturing to what we thought was a poor country, but we fueled that country. That country became built on low-cost labor, and now China is one of the most, powerful countries out there. So, using domination to control people, historically has been, unfortunately, just because of money to build, to create an empire, to create a civilization. We came, as I was saying earlier, from the Dark Ages, going back to the media and all of this. Like, we have been striving for civilization. We don't want to be raping, pillaging. We don't want that tribalism. We've come away from that. I talked about this in my previous video. We've come away from all of that. And then when you see, forces now that are trying to take us back into tribalism, they're trying to divide us again. Well, I think that we have plenty of countries now established around the world. I think, why don't we just, like, keep what we have? We don't need to, like, dominate anymore. We don't need to, like, why don't we, respect each other's borders? You've got Israel that are just trying to take over all of, the Middle East, and, You've got, you know, the communists and the, you know, democracy fighting still over, I don't know, Ukraine and Crimea and, you know, parts of South America, Venezuela. Like, it's just so much going on. You have drug cartels, you have, so it's a huge discussion, you know, to, you know, Cam, if I can use your name, Cam, it's a big question you're asking, and I'll try and keep it brief. But going back to the Black Lives Matter, so, you know, my parents are originally Middle Eastern, and you know, I grew up, you know, and I have faced hatred and racism, you know, and I'm not black, I'm Middle Eastern, but I have faced it. I faced it, I would say, the most. Um, I never paid attention to it, to be honest with you, because I always like felt like it's not going to stop me. I was always focused on music and art, and you know, if people are going to hate, it's coming from weakness, it's coming from fear. You know, the most recent racism that I encountered was maybe a year ago in my gym. Someone who's actually a UFC fighter, well known, not famous, but a well-known UFC fighter, and I probably should say his name because he should be embarrassed of what he said. But you know, the comment that he made to me when he said it, it didn't hurt me at the time so much because I knew that it comes from jealousy, it comes from weakness, it comes from insecurity, it comes from fear, right? And when we're in pain, and when we're afraid, and when we are trying to attack someone, we'll use anything we can to hurt them, right? Now, at the time, like, he didn't realize that that's not the way to hurt me. He could have said a lot of other things that would maybe hurt me more, you know? Like, I don't know, your stupid head, or there's a lot of insults he could have said that would hurt me, maybe more. But that one has never really bothered me that much. And I'm so grateful for that, because there are people that, like, what I received was like, you know, like so mild, so it's just nothing compared to like the racism that, you know, a lot of people experience. You know, black people unfortunately have to endure on a daily basis. I have family that are so dark that they look like they are from African American descent. You know, my own mom, you know, just has expressed fear of the police because she's just afraid, you know, that she's dark complexion, and you know, she's afraid. And I tell her, don't be afraid, you know. We have to be, unfortunately, extremely careful and polite, and you know, like, I believe you should be polite and respectful to everyone, you know, including the police, but especially around the police in America, because America's full of guns. People here have guns. People carry guns around with them. So the police, being a police in America, in Los Angeles, you know, in Chicago and New York, like, it's a scary job. It's a hard, scary job, and they're afraid. And they've had experiences, most likely, that have led to them feeling the, you know, the way that they do. But it's not just their experiences. They've also, unfortunately, been raised. You know, my mom talks about when she was a little girl, there would be cartoons on TV of like black people, like, you know, Africans, like cooking, you know, people and eating like cannibals, you know, and then that's the kind of stuff that my grandparents' generation were raised on, that black people are scary, that they're dangerous, they should be afraid of them. That's the propaganda, that's the media. It ties back into the first part of your question, you know, where a nation can put another nation down. Now, why? Why do we do that? Because we're afraid, right? Because they're afraid of, look at black people, like, look at them. Some of the, I say this to everyone, since I was a little kid, like, when I'm the first real, like, interactions I had with black people was when I lived in England, um, and started doing sports and started playing rugby and football and soccer, right? I had never seen such skillful people, not only skillful, like strong, like physically just, super like athletic, but also funny and incredible at dancing. And like my response to that was like, these are the best people I have ever seen in my life. Like incredible musicians, like look at like the best musicians on earth, or, just, from my perspective, like I think racism can go both ways. I think you can be racist by saying that a certain group of people are bad, but you can also be racist by picking a group of people and saying that they're the best and they're so great as well. Like we're all great, and we're all bad. We're all human and we all have different strengths. But when I had those encounters in England, I was like very struck, and I was lucky. I most of my friends at school, were black, and maybe because I was Middle Eastern and I gravitated towards maybe that group more, the Asian, the Indians, the Pakistanis, the black communities. Those were the people that I was hanging out with maybe more. But I had all kinds of friends. I had white friends, I had Asian friends. Like I never really thought about it that way. I just thought like, I just always thought that black people were so cool and very, very chill and incredible athletes and just funny and just very intelligent, just very respectful, I found, just understood respect. And this, I would like to tie this into why I believe that was the case, because when we put down people, when we bully people, because that's in the end what slavery, is, slavery is domination, is keeping people down, is putting people down, is trying to wipe people down, is abusing people. It's making them, so like taking away their freedom. It's the opposite of freedom, right? When we make them so dependent, when we make them so vulnerable, when we keep them down, it reminds me a lot of bullying. And why do we bully people? We bully people we're afraid of. And who are we afraid of? We're usually afraid of the strong people, the best people. We're not afraid of like the weak people who aren't posing any threat. We're afraid of the strongest people. We're afraid of, that's who have been put down. If you look at history, same thing with the Jews. The Jewish community tend to stick together, and there's strength in that. They stick together, they work together, they build together. Community is very important to them. And look what happened to them. They were, because the Nazis were afraid of them. The Nazis would argue that the Jews were taking over things. If you look into history, you'll see that they were getting involved with the banking industry in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. And they were starting to like take over the banking industry, right? So the Nazis' response, to behavior to the Jews, they would justify their behavior, they came up with all kinds of reasons for why they treated the Jews, why they tried to extinguish them, destroy them, crush them. But what happened? They just made them stronger, right? And it's the same thing with the slavery, poor, really like unbelievable. Like you go to a nation, you go to the Africa, the cradle of all humanity, where all humanity began, and they just took all these people, kidnapped all these people, just subjected them to God knows what for over hundreds of years, And a lot of nations are guilty of having done this. Subjected them to God knows what, rape, murder, all kinds of stuff, Django was a great movie that touched on a little bit, like what, making them fight each other and, unleashing dogs on them, and worse yet, in our modern times, putting them in terrible neighborhoods where there's liquor stores and gun stores like everywhere, no opportunities, no education, right? The things that we need. And, we all need to thrive, education and jobs. And, if there's any sort of discussion on reparations, reparations is like, that talks about, giving money, like giving back to that community that's been, has been a victim to slavery. Like, I 100% believe that's the least that can be done. And it's not for me to say how that should be done, but just with respect and humility, I would say that I would hope that if any reparations will be given to those descendants of slavery, that it will go into education and jobs. That's where I think any reparations should be focused, like free university, free college, or at least like, help to allow, more greater advantage, But then you're going to get the other side of the coin, which I hear all the time, and I can somewhat understand it, but it's an incorrect argument, which will say that, hey, we all had to struggle, we all had to work hard, and I hear this when I go to my chiropractor, and this is the type of, I wouldn't say racism, but I would say it is the type of uneducation that exists today, that has come from parents passing down to their kids and saying, hey, everyone should work for a living, don't you think? Why should he get or she get special treatment for something that happened so long ago? This is not correct thinking at all, because if you chop the legs off of someone and then say, hey, you can still work your ass off, literally, because you have no legs. But there is this mentality that, hey, do what you can with whatever you have. And I am for that, but I don't believe this is correct thinking in this regard. I believe that that yes, we all have to work hard, and yes, we have to do what we can with what we have. But I do believe in reparations, but I maybe don't personally, and it's not for me to say, but I don't believe it should be paid in money. I think it should be free education, free access to university. Something clever. All the clever leaders, people who are way smarter than me, should get together and think about that. But look at the reparations that the Jewish community received after World War II. They received the state of Israel, right? So why not same sort of situation for, the black people, who descendant of slaves? Why not the same to the Native American community that no one talks about, who were completely wiped out and decimated and just raided and looted of all of their wealth. So yeah, Cam, it's a huge question, and to ask someone like myself who tends to ramble on about something as simple as just a tree. So I will try to wrap this all up, but I will say that we can endlessly divide ourselves. Like I said, even within a family, we can find a division. Whether it's a white family, they will find differences within themselves, or a black family, or a Middle Eastern or Asian family can hate each other. And even within yourself, you can hate yourself and have divisions within yourself. So I believe it's good that all of this is coming to the surface. I believe it's good that we're having deeper than ever conversations about this and sharing perspectives. But I also believe that we have to focus on what unites us and what is the same within us, and we have way more in in common with each other than we do differences with each other. And we'll always be able to find differences. This is why people argue, whether you're in a relationship or your wife or your husband. That's why we argue, because we're going to focus on our differences. Oh, you don't like this, and I like this. But we shouldn't be using like this cultural, like, oh, it's a cultural thing, or it's a racial thing. We're all different, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We're all different. You know, Asian people are different. White people are different. Europeans are different. Like, Middle Easterners are different. But that's great. That's what makes it amazing. Imagine if you go out in the world and there's no Chinese food or Thai food or Vietnamese or pho, or there's no sushi, or there's no Indian food, or there's no, barbecue, or there's no, imagine a world with no hamburgers or hot dogs or T-bone steaks. Imagine if you just had one thing to eat, like in the Matrix, they're just eating that gooey stuff that tastes like chicken. Imagine, like here's the thing, that 70% of our world already knows this, and we're already pummeling forward. There's just a very vocal minority at the moment, and I think it's like the final death throes. It's like a cornered dog that's about to get killed, and that is this old school, superiority mentality. It's coming to an end. It's coming to an end. Our world is moving towards technology. It's inevitable. It's already happening. And if you look at the people that are funding campaigns, that's important. So if you want to get into the left and right, the extreme left and the extreme right, just look at who's in those teams, who's funding those campaigns. You're going to see on one side it's going to be fossil fuel, it's going to be coal, it's going to be banking sectors, it's going to be kind of old school stuff where we've come from. And then you're going to see on the other side, it's going to be more technology companies, it's going to be more environmentally conscious countries and companies and corporations. And that's all it is. And corporations are run by human beings, and they're supported by human beings. And the best vote we can do is with how you spend your money. And that's really, at the end of it, where the control is. We have the control with how we spend our money. Are you buying, XYZ, or are you buying, ABC, right? Are you buying more, let's say, organic? Are you interested more in clean air? Do you want to live somewhere that the air is clean, that it's more green? Humans, we love trees, we love green, we love clean air, we love beaches, we love nature. Yeah, so we're all, at the end of the day, really, I believe, controlling everything. Some people will try to rise to power and try to control us. Look at Trump. He's tried to do that. He's failing. He can't control us all. We all want to enjoy, cool coffee shops, cool restaurants, cool libraries, cool music, cool movies. We want, that's what we want. We want to enjoy ourselves. We want to eat. We want to feel safe. These are the things that we all have in common with each other. We want to enjoy our lives. We want to all get along. We want to play sports together. We want to watch sports together. We don't want to fight. We might want to fight just for short term, but we don't want that for long term. It satisfies us briefly, but in the long run, we all just want to kind of get along. We all want to be loved, and we all want to have someone to love. And let's see if I'm answering everything here, man. So sorry about that. So my battery just died. I have about 30%, so I'll just wrap this video up. Thanks for the great question. I appreciate it. I appreciate you being interested to know my perspectives on this. And, the good thing about everything that's going on is that everybody's more engaged it seems, than ever with politics, with everything. And people seem to be a lot more well educated on politics. And hopefully, this means that everyone's going to vote and be more engaged, be more vocal. But also, I hope that everyone will appreciate everything that it's taken for our species to get to where we are now, the civilization. So being civil is very important. Being respectful to each other is very important. And just to wrap up what happened before my battery died. So yeah, I think following the money is very important. Looking, if you're interested in politics, look at who supports the campaigns. You'll see on one side it's more certain religious organizations, maybe the gun lobby, the NRA, all those, what they do is they donate and they support and they give money to campaigns so that when those leaders they get elected, they're going to help them out, right? And then if you look on the other side, where are they getting their money from too? So at the end of the day, we are really the ones who have the power. We just unfortunately are very manipulated, easily manipulated, controlled by the media, by the powers that be. So it's important for us to educate ourselves, educate our friends, educate our children, but it starts with ourselves. And educating our friends and our children and our family doesn't mean like, talking at them. It means just live in the way that you believe, practice what you preach. And then people will always observe and they'll say, wow, look at him or her, how they are eating, how they are meditating, how they are, being active, and how they speak to people, how they treat people. So people learn from us, not from what we tell them to do, but by how we behave and how we act. So I think that the world we live in is an incredible place, and at the moment, we're just suffering poor leadership. But it's okay. When we endure difficulty, it tends to make us a lot stronger. And this is what I just wanted to end everything with: is that when we have brutalized and enslaved, people because of their color, now if you look, they're just stronger than ever. Like, after God knows how long, how many years of slavery, not being able to speak, not being able to do anything, as soon as black people had some freedoms, they just blasted their heart into those tiny little holes of freedom, whether it was being free, able and allowed to play music, or then you got like some of the greatest music on earth ever, whether it's through Miles Davis or Jimi Hendrix, or long list of all the incredible artists and musicians. And I have a playlist on my Spotify. If any of you would like to support my Patreon, I share my Spotify playlist. But I have a growing playlist of like, all black artists, black musicians, all the music that I have been influenced with, grown up with. I think my playlist is called A Change Is Gonna Come. But yeah, I can share that if anyone is interested in supporting and joining my Patreon. There will be a link somewhere around here. I think, wait, this way. Yeah, that way. But yeah, when we try to put people down, all we do is we make them stronger. Look at what happened to women. We put women down for thousands of years, God knows how long, just treating them as if they're not human. Doing whatever we want with them, trading them. Just raping, abusing. Mental abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. The abuse that women have endured. I mean, And now look, finally women, like, look how powerful women are, and not just powerful, but loving and kind and compassionate. And they're killing everybody with kindness, and they're taking over everything with their intelligence, and they've learned how to deal with things, and it's with love. And I don't mean that in a naive way. It means that they don't engage in petty arguments. They are focused on goals. So many women I know that are actually supporting their families, that are making much more money than the husbands, because they're better, because people prefer to work with them. They're more focused. They're less ego driven. I prefer working with women over men, because men, I find, are just kind of petty and ego driven, and just not focusing on the right things, want to compete, want to feel better, whereas women are like, hungry to be successful, and let's get this job done and on to the next one, and let me do a better job next time, and that means, you know, uh, better quality work, better interaction, easier to work with. Women are killing it right now. Yeah, but then there are certain sects of women, that are too extreme and almost taking the stance of, having learned what their abusers did to them and taking on those roles and personalities. And you can see that with extreme maybe feminism, or extreme whatever you want to call it. But it doesn't exist just with extreme feminism or with women. You can see that happened also with the Jews, with the Jewish community. They were abused in a similar way that women were, put down, brutalized, killed, raped, done all kinds of horrible stuff to them. And, you know, they are now one of the most powerful nations, small country, but one of the most powerful countries on earth, just like how women have become powerful, And then, yes, within the Jewish community too, there exists that extreme, the extreme elements. Because of the pain that they endured, they learned it, right? They learned it from the people that enslaved and bullied them, right? And now they're inflicting the same sort of thing on the poor Palestinians, right? Brutalizing them, putting them in, ghettos, and concealing them. The same stuff that was done to them, they're doing it to the Palestinians, It's the same story of bullies at school or bullies anywhere. They are inflicting the pain that was taught to them probably when they were bullied by their parents, by their father, and their father was bullied by his father, right? So when we're aware of these things, we have the opportunity to change our behavior, be better, to grow in our lifetime so that we can pass on the baton to to our children, or it doesn't have to be our children, but to the next generation, teach them so that they'll be better, more refined. But now you see with the black community, stronger than ever, just had one of the greatest presidents on earth in Obama, some of the greatest leaders on earth in Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther Kings of the world. There's endless, so many, incredible black leaders, incredible black musicians, artists, athletes. They have become more powerful than ever because of everything they have had to endure. And through the greatest difficulty, we learn that the way through difficulty is not through resistance in that sense of fighting fire with fire, but resistance using the power of love and love, which is the highest form of intelligence. Fighting intelligently, fighting with an open heart. Or as my friend once said, fight honorably and with all that you have. So thanks again for the question, and I hope that this video doesn't insult or offend anyone in any way. I've tried my best to share my own personal perspective and views based on my journey, having lived and grown up in the Middle East for 10 years, having grown up in England and Europe for a long period of time, and here in the States and a little bit in Asia as well. So based on all the interactions I've had with people and based on everything I have learned, and these are just my own opinions, and I'm grateful for having this platform to be able to share it with everyone out there, and I hope something in here helps. So vote with how you spend your money, vote with how you cast your attention, and of course vote with uh, in your elections as well. Local elections are important too, the governors and all of that. So our world, I believe, is on the verge of being the greatest place we have ever experienced. It already is, despite what people think. And I think it's only going to get better. Adios for now.